This film tells the mysterious virus that attacks Korea makes chaos because infected people turn into zombies, and the struggle of a father to care for and protect his daughter who turned into zombies so as not to be hunted by the military. We were shown a man named Lee who returned home and saw his daughter named Sue had become a zombie, and it seemed like he wasn't surprised, calmly even though Sue tried to attack. All of these events began before the zombie virus attacked. Lee was a zookeeper, while Sue was a student who liked K-pop, and Ginger Cat named Young Yi, who was busy watching breaking news on television, showing infected citizens attack on the streets of Seoul because the unknown virus spread quickly to make chaos. That day, they celebrated Sue's 15th birthday simply, and Ginger Cat was not interested because there were no fish on the table. Suddenly, they heard the commotion outside, which turned out to be their neighbor dancing romantic during the day. But they did not realize that it was a zombie attack, and finally something terrible was indeed not a romantic dance to make both of them frightened and hide while zombies approached wanting fresh blood, trying to destroy the window. Lee was very angry because it would be busy to clean the house and would call the police. But that women do not care about it, trying to enter, so they must immediately escape before being infected with the zombie virus. When running to the streets, they realized that this was not easy because the area was full of zombies, like Zombie Scooter, Zombie Grandma, and even Zombie Chihuahua. Lee has a plan to go to his mother's house in the village by starting to act like a zombie so as not to be a target, that even both looked like infected with crazy snails. Unfortunately, all the zombies are aware that they are not members of the club, so they have to run away immediately. But Sue fell while Zombie Grandma prepared to bite, and Lee sacrificed his hand. Luckily, the Zombie Grandma used dentures, so Lee was not infected, and they had to immediately leave the location, so Lee stole a car that didn't seem easy because all zombies tried to catch up. Finally, both of them managed to escape using a stolen car, but it turned out that Sue was infected because while waiting for Lee to steal the car, she was bitten by the children's zombies.
Lee tried to calm down and say maybe the hospital can cure it, while the virus began to spread to show Sue, who slowly lost consciousness, turned into zombies and began to attack so that the car crashed into a road divider. Lee tried to calm the situation without having to hurt his daughter. That night, Grandpa Kim arrived at home while Lee was waiting and tried to lie when Sue was sick. This made Kim worried, trying to meet with her grandchild in the room. But she saw a terrible thing there because Sue had become a zombie, trying to attack. So with the power of the Matrix film, Kim fixed this condition. After Lee told me what really happened, Kim was very sad to see Sue had turned into a zombie. Then they see news on television if the government has blocked the entire streets and is guarded by the military by doing anything so that the mysterious virus that attacks Korea does not spread, and the military will execute anyone infected. So it was true, because the next day, when Lee went to the hospital to find information, in the hospital situation was very chaotic because the zombies treated to raging and attacked anyone, so that the military who arrived there immediately did the task with the execution on the spot. Seeing this, Lee had to leave immediately before they found Sue, and then at home, Kim saw the news on television if the government warned to immediately report if he found someone who had been infected with the virus. Lee decided to dig up the ground to bury his daughter rather than being executed by the military. I'd rather do it himself and apologized if he had to do this. But when he was going to kill her, he could not bear to be able then apologize and cry if he could not become a good father. Seeing this, Kim was upset, trying to execute if Lee couldn't. Both of them argued because, according to Lee, it might be a hospital to make Sue return to normal, while Ginger Cat warned that if Sue had escaped. Then, without wasting time, they immediately chased Sue before attacking villagers. Finally, they found Sue in a warehouse. Lee realized that the reason for Sue was hiding in the warehouse because when Sue was little, she loved playing here with her mom, who might still have memory as a human being. Then Lee tried to play Sue's favorite songs and showed the response if this girl still had the awareness as a human being, not fully turned into a zombie. That night, finally, scientists had identified if infectious disease is a costid called GIA virus, destroys soft tissues, leaving only instincts, just like zombie, but not eat brain in plants versus zombies. Research team has found stimulating the cerebral cortex of mice infected with GIA virus restores memory and weakens the virus.
Kim tried to make egg rice, hoping Sue could eat normally, but it seemed to fail, and it turned out that she would prefer food from pork. Suddenly, a childhood friend named Joe arrived to meet after hearing if Lee had returned to the village. Joe also asked about Sue, even though they tried to lie and realized that Sue had turned into a zombie. Thinking that if the village was in danger, Joe tried to call the police, but Lee refused and explained that Sue was still alive with human consciousness, and even he showed some video recordings if it was true. Then now he tried to reactivate the Sue memory to weaken the GIA virus by giving training. Hearing this, Joe refused because the situation would be very dangerous if Sue spread the virus in the village, and it was better to follow the government protocol before bad things happened. But the next day, Joe has been waiting to explain if the his relations working pharmaceutical companies already finished animal testing, and he said they will apply for emergency use authorization, and Joe is also willing to help to train Sue until the treatment drugs is developed. To conduct training, they brought Sue to an island without residents. With the first test, no bidding training. And the situation became funny when Sue was interested in pursuing Joe because it was like pork. The next exercise, Lee gave an order to Sue to blink. Even Youngie easily did that. Then the whistle as a sign that Sue stops to attack. Day by day, tirelessly, they routinely train Sue to show good developments by writing notes according to the training date, while the government succeeds in lower the number of new infection, will even give a prize of 100 million to anyone for reporting infected people. Day after day, they continue to do exercises so Sue can become normal human beings until treatment drug development finished. The time passed. Now Sue can understand what do and don't. Lee trains Sue with simple sentences like, "Call Dad," but it's not easy. Take longer while Youngie show off if it's easy. Kim advised Lee to the city to buy makeup for Sue. But while was there, a childhood friend named Shin realizing Lee's whereabouts despite trying to hide. Shin did not expect that Lee had returned to the village while she had become a teacher at Yunbong Middle School, and this was like a reunion for both. Lee said that he now lives with Kim and his daughter. Hearing this, Shin was surprised if Lee was married, so she really wanted to meet with Sue, but Lee refused and asked to get out of the car, even though Kim's house was still far away. It turned out that Shin was Lee's first love, and Joe's deliberately invited Shin to meet because the three used to be childhood friends in the village. Shin heard from Joe if Lee returned to the village because he was also fired. With Sue receiving brain treatment, she offered Sue to go to school in her school. But Lee refused and lied if Sue is currently homeschooled. Then the news about the zombie virus has ended. Suddenly Shin says he really hates zombies because when her fiancé is infected with the virus, she must kill her love with own hand and will not let it happen to others. Lee realized that if Shin was an expert judo player who received a lot of awards, while Sue was interested in the cosplay festival on television that would be held in Ozland.
Lee wanted to take Sue to the festival and look for some clothes, but he found a past document about Sue so that it was hallucinating if Sue was still a normal human, speaking like before, even dancing together. But now all the happiness is only a dream and crying. That night, Lee explained to Joe if he wanted to take Sue to the festival, hoping that her memory recovered. At first, Joe did not agree because Sue never been to a crowded place before, but after Lee begging, Joe was willing to accompany the festival. Unexpectedly, Shin had been at Kim's house, and suddenly Sue wake up from her sleep, maybe want to toilet. Shin tried to get closer, and Lee immediately pushed Sue into the room, making Shin suspicious of something strange. So Lee and Kim made the drama trying to drive Shin from inside the house, and he hoped to don't come here again.
That morning, Kim began to use the makeup purchased by Lee before to make Sue not look like a zombie. And Yang Yi accompanied there while Joe cosplayed like Thor showed his fat stomach. Finally, Kim done with her task, then Sue came out with beautiful makeup like not a zombie. And now they are preparing for a party at the carnival cosplay. After that, Kim went to attend an event in the village because Unbong Village got a charter because it has become the safest village without a virus attack. Unexpectedly, villagers' chief asked Kim about Sue after hearing from Shin if the girl did not go to school, and in the village, all children were required to go to school. Kim was confused by that question and immediately left from there, but villagers' chief stopped her and, "Why you must go, because party just started." And finally, an old bone party began to show that they were the king of the party with their respective madness because age was only a number. Moving to Ozland during the carnival party, they were seen enjoying a beautiful night like nothing had happened bad because Lee was sure that Sue was really okay, that would not attack like a zombie. Joe gets good news if the GIA virus medicine will coming soon, so that the hope for Sue to become a human being really real makes Lee very happy. But without them knowing that Sue has disappeared, both of them very panicked and immediately sought Sue's whereabouts. It turned out that Sue was interested in the scent of food there. Even though it was hit by someone, Sue was not angry and kept going looking for something that seemed delicious, that turned out to be churros, and the seller immediately chased because Sue had not paid. Luckily, they found Sue and Lee apologized by paying the food. Sue unexpectedly said churros, made both of them surprised because so far Sue had not said anything, so Lee was really happy and would buy all churros, while the churros seller was confused by what happened.
Returning to the village when Kim arrived at house, Shin waiting there and knew everything about Sue from Lee's notes. Finally, Kim explained all things, and it turned out that Lee, not real dad, but Sue is daughter from Lee's sister named Jung Yun, who had died. At that time, Jung Yun often quarreled with her husband because of money. Then they returned to Kim's house, so since then, Lee often played with little Sue. But one day, Jung Yun accidentally died. Lee was very sad, and since then he became a Sue dad, while the real dad take all Jung Yun insurance money, then went to start another family. Then when they came home, Shin tried to attack Sue because she was still sure if this girl was very dangerous. Of course, Lee tried to protect and calm Sue, who wanted to attack. Seeing that Shin was surprised because she understood what Lee said, they made an agreement if Sue was really safe and could think, then Sue had to go to school as proof if he was true. But if it refused, then Shin would call the police, then like or not, Lee agreed with that agreement. So since that day, Sue went to school. Shin explained to all students if Sue had difficulty speaking, but on the first day at school, they tried to disturb Sue, who was just silent. Luckily, Lee, who was there, tried to fix the condition, even though this was very silly because the contact lens moved to the corner of the eye. Even when playing basketball, Sue tried to come to play, but unfortunately, Shin, who was still traumatized by zombies, suddenly threw the ball hardly, made Sue fall with a funny face. So Lee immediately brought to the clinic and Joe worked hard for fix Sue's face. And finally, after several trials, Joe's success done his task. Shin apologized with an apple from kids, and it seemed like they were very concerned about Sue, even though Sue looked strange. That night, Kim and Sue played cards, and they seemed to both enjoy the game. Even Youngie didn't care about it. Unexpectedly, Sue's real dad come named Han-sun. Han-sun come shows to Kim that many people have been looking for Sue's whereabouts because when in the cosplay carnival, someone has recorded a video and becomes viral. Kim could only surrender when Han-sun tried to kidnap Sue for 100 million. Lee, who got news that Sue had just been kidnapped by Han-sun, immediately pursued and stopped his cars, even though this was very dangerous. Lee, very angry, then hit Han-sun, and now they fought. Sue, who saw Lee beaten brutally, became angry and immediately attacked Han-sun by biting like a zombie. Lee scolded Sue for making a fatal mistake by biting humans so that Han-sun slowly became a zombie, and Lee decided to kill Han-sun. After that incident, Lee and Sue decided to go far away from the village because he did not want to bring a lot of problems there. Even though Joe did not agree because he was worried that Sue was caught, it would be executed, and Lee would be imprisoned. But Lee was sure this was the right decision because Kim wanted to go with them, including Youngie. Before leaving, Lee asked Kim for help to give a letter to Shin, but apparently they saw military troops heading to Unbong Village because they had tracked Sue's whereabouts.
opened the letter, which turned out to be Lee's goal was to keep Kim, Shin, and Joe from the problem, because he knew the military would soon arrest Sue and take responsibility himself.
Currently, Kim's house is full of military forces, and the commander asked about the existence of both of them to Kim. Lee plans to bring Sue to the island without residence and will live there, but they are late because military forces have arrived there and surround the area. Both of them immediately hid in the warehouse, and now they are trying to negotiate. Lee explained everything about Sue, who still had human memories and was not dangerous, would not bite, even could speak. Lee begged not to kill his daughter and be willing to open the door, but the military was not deal with criminal. Seeing this, Lee could only surrender. He apologized to Sue for not being able to protect anymore and give the last task for bite him. Of course, Sue refused that, but Lee explained this is the only way to be able to go to heaven together. So Sue bit Lee, even though this was the wrong thing because he had done something that was prohibited from the start. Finally, the military managed to enter and shoot Lee, who began to turn into zombies. They stopped shooting when Sue was crying and began to call Dad. Three months later, Sue woke up in the hospital and had recovered from the GIA virus, making Kim, Shin, and Joe happy. Then Kim drove Sue to see Lee treated in the coma state. Scientists found GIA virus antibodies in Lee can be the key developing a cure, raising hopes. They explained that he had analyzed Lee's blood in more detail and identified neutralizing antibodies so that slowly Lee can cure his own body from infection after bite by Sue. And it turns out it was because Sue repeatedly caused Lee minor injuries, which then were healed and triggered an immune response, or can call vaccine so that it could make Sue back to normal. Kim gave a notebook made by Lee when training before, like Sue playing with Young Yi, Grandma, even when biting something. At the end of the record, Lee wrote, "Whatever Sue can be cure or not, she will always be my daughter and we will happy forever." Time passed, they were still waiting for Lee to wake up, but not with Young Yi. Shin played the video while Sue on the dance competition, even though she knew Lee in coma state, and it turned out that Lee heard the music, began to move his fingers. And the film ended. Message from the film: whoever you are, whatever you are, if you get a miracle of love, then you have become truly a human being. I am Fox, and thanks for watching.